Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And firstly, I would like to just thank the organizer for inviting me to this event. So the topic of my presentation today is the impact of El Nino on global vegetable oil and palm oil trade. So what I'll do is, firstly, I'll do a very brief recap on El Nino, and then we'll take a look at the El Nino impact on the global weather pattern. And then I will do a series of analysis on the impact of El Nino on various edible oils products. In particular, I'll be focusing on palm, soybean, and India's production. And then we'll do a study on the impact of El Nino on CPO price before I will conclude our price view. Okay, just a very brief recap on El Nino. I think everyone is already very familiar with what El Nino is. But just very quickly, it happens every 3 to 5 years. And every time it happens, it lasts maybe about 9 to 12 months. But you do have prolonged El Nino episodes that could last many years. And in terms of intensity, what weather experts are saying is that the most intense period of a historical El Nino is actually during the December to April period. This is because that is when the Pacific sea surface temperature are normally the warmest. So I think we should all watch out for how the El Nino impact weather patterns. Closer to December period, it could intensify in terms of the drought. The last El Nino was in 2009, 2010. So it's been close to 5 years, or more than 5 years since we had the last El Nino. So obviously we are overdue for one. And that's why we're having it this year. I think a bit of caveat, if you read all the weather websites, they will always mention that not every El Nino events are the same, so there's something to bear in mind as well. Okay, so in terms of monitoring El Nino, I think the most used variables is actually the Oceanic Nino Index, so that is measuring the temperature in the ocean. That is widely used in US and many other weather experts. So they define that El Nino is here when ONI is more than 0.5 degrees Celsius above the average sea surface temperature based on the baseline. And then on top, and then if you look at atmosphere, then over in Australia, they use the Southern Oscillation Index, SOI, and El Nino is defined when we see negative value of below 8. That's for the SOI. Okay, so let's take a look at this ONI. Based on what we can see from the website, the US weather experts actually issued the El Nino advisory on 5th of March. Okay, and they base this on the ONI statistic plus a few other factors, but I think ONI is one of those closely watched figures. Okay, and there is a definition in terms of what you consider a weak, moderate, or strong El Nino. Currently, we are at a moderate El Nino stage. Okay, but obviously, as mentioned by the previous speaker, if you exceed 1.5 degree or going to 2 degrees Celsius above the average, then we could be in for a strong El Nino event. Moving on, over in Australia, this is the Bureau of Meteorology Australia. They actually upgraded the ENSO tracker to El Nino status on 12th of May, so they came in slightly later than the US weather experts. They look at the SOI, some of the key features for them to define El Nino, and currently can clearly see that the SOI index is below 8, and that's why we are currently undergoing El Nino period. So overall, on a consensus basis, as previously mentioned, we are in for El Nino until perhaps first quarter 2016. The table actually shows you the probability of El Nino based on latest forecast. The probability is quite high up to March 2016 at 94%, and then it drops off towards the second quarter of the year. And in terms of how they look at this El Nino versus the past, they are saying that at this point of time, it is stronger than the 82, 83, but weaker than 97, 98. But that could continue to change as we move forward depending on the development of the temperature. So let's take a look at the picture on El Nino and its impact on global weather pattern. And this particular chart focuses on rainfall in the how El Nino actually El Nino impact the rainfall in the global weather system. Okay, so I think the first thing we want to focus on is you can see dry in Southeast Asia in general. It covers mostly all of Indonesia, Australia, and most parts of Malaysia. So there's one area that we'll focus on, which is palm oil region. So Malaysia and Indonesia produce roughly about 85% of the global palm oil output. So that's one area that's going to affect the edible oil. Then if you look at India, so India, you can see that it's also going to be dry. And therefore we're going to focus on the Indian monsoon later and how India's production historically has been affected by El Nino. And the last point is take a look at South and North America. You can see that you have wet spots towards the southern part of South America, and that will be Argentina. So watch out for weather events in Argentina towards the start of the planting season, which will be happening in November, December. And northern part of South America, you have dry. So that will be a bit of Brazil. So that could be some impact on the production for Brazil and Argentina as we move into next year. In terms of US, it looks like it's a bit wet there, wetter than usual perhaps, but it depends on which part of United States we are talking about. But in general, I think what the weather experts, based on their analysis, they're saying that El Nino typically you will see definitely a deficient rainfall in Indonesia, northern part of South America, and then some parts of South America you have also rainfall, excessive rainfall, and southern US you could also see excessive rainfall. So because of this, we're going to focus on the three events. One is the palm oil trades, soybean, and India. So just a brief recap where all the soybeans and oilseeds are produced. Now we all know that palm oil are mostly produced in Malaysia and Indonesia, but if you want to get a better idea on where all the oilseeds in the world are produced, and you can see this map here, mostly in North and South America, and then you have quite a bit of production in India, China, and Europe. So you can take a look at this map versus the previous map, and you can see what are the potential impact on oilseeds production around the world, as well as soybean, which is at the bottom part of the slides. But generally, the focus area is still India, South America, North America, and less so on China, but China will definitely be impacted as well to some extent. So, El Nino's impact on global vegetable oil trade. Palm oil supply will definitely be impacted by the drought that we expect to have during the period of El Nino, either drought or lower rainfall in Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia. We have put out a pie chart on production of palm oil, and you can see Indonesia, Malaysia accounts for about 85% of the palm oil supply of the world, plus Thailand, you will have probably about 88%. Then we also focus on India, because if you look at the world major importer of palm oil, India is the largest importer of palm oil in 2014, accounting for about 18% of the palm oil imported globally. So if India had a lower rainfall due to poor monsoon, we could potentially see better demand for edible oils in general, and palm oil will definitely benefit from that as well. Now, soybean planting areas impact from the El Nino, I think that is a mixed record there, but there will be some impact as well historically. But we'll show you more on that in the later slides. So I think the first focus is on El Nino and palm oil production. So we take a look at the 9 El Nino events, the past 9 El Nino events, and what we do is we actually look at the changes in yield production, and we do a very simple analysis where, for example, if you're looking at May 82 to June 83 El Nino, we just take a look at the production and the yield in 1983 versus 1982. And this is the conclusion of the analysis. You see a negative effect on FFP and CPO yields in 6 out of the 9 past El Nino events. Production growth for palm oil in Malaysia, has slowed down in the past 6 out of 9 events. And what we look here is that we look at the 29 years compounded annual growth rate of CPO output growth, and anything less than 6%, based on the period that we are analyzing, we consider that to be slower production growth. And if we dig a bit deeper into this, in terms of the El Nino intensity, if you have a very strong El Nino period, you can see that production decline historically in Malaysia. There are only 2 periods where production actually declined, and that was 82, 83, 97, 98 El Nino, and that's the strong El Nino period. And then you may have also noted that in 86, 88, despite an El Nino event, the declining yield was quite severe, but the production growth was not as severe. And I think we'll take a look at the mature area. There seems to be quite a lot of new areas coming on stream, so that sort of offsetted some of the impact from the weaker yield. Now, if we do the same analysis on global palm oil production, okay, so combining Indonesia and others, and we have a shorter statistic here because of limited data availability for Indonesia. So we concluded this analysis based on the past 7 events. We do see slower than usual CPO output growth in the past 4 out of 7 El Nino events, but only one negative growth, only one decline in production in the past 7 events. So that is in 97, 98, one of the strongest El Nino periods. For Indonesia, what we can see is that they do have a slower production growth during the last El Nino period, where the growth was probably about 6%, and historically Indonesia's production would be generally closer to perhaps 10%. So I think from the conclusion here, from the analysis on the palm oil production, definitely historically there's strong evidence to suggest that El Nino do lead to lower production or lower yield, and that could either resulted in lower palm oil output growth globally or slower production growth globally for palm oil. So that is our first analysis on palm oil production during El Nino period. Now the second part of the analysis, we look at India and how India's trade has been impacted in the past El Nino. So India, if you just a bit of background, they are the largest importer of edible oils and palm oil in 2014. They imported about close to 60% of all their edible oil consumption. Palm oil, they import a lot of palm oil. Palm oil forms roughly about 64% of all the oils that they import. And in terms of their total edible oil consumption, palm oil maybe make up about 38% in 2014. So India is a very important market for palm oil because they do buy a large chunk of the global palm oil because of insufficient domestic oilseeds production. So let's take a look at their current monsoon season. So India relies quite a bit on their monsoon that starts in July and ends in September every year. The map here shows the latest update on their monsoon season based on the India Meteorological Department, and you can see in the table inside the map, it shows that currently the monsoon deficit was roughly 15%. This is at 18th of September 2015. And one of the key oilseeds that India produces is actually rapeseed. And you can see in the map there where are the key regions for India's major rapeseed production. And if you match that with the deficient rainfall that we saw on the map on the right, there seems to be potentially some impact of potentially weaker rapeseed production for the current crop season. Okay, so we try to analyze the same thing, and this one we actually took that from one of the presentation from Dr. B.B. Mehta, and he has done an analysis on El Nino impact on the various crops. Okay, and this is based on 7 El Nino events. Now you can see that most of the El Nino events in the past has affected soybean, groundnut, and rapeseed production in India. These are the ones that we are interested in because they will affect the edible oil trade. Okay, but it's not always that only El Nino affects the weather pattern in India. There are other times where there are no El Nino, and yet you do see slower or declining production in some of the oilseeds area. But soybean output, you can see, fell in 5 out of the past 7 El Nino events. But I think the one that is most affected in the past appears to be groundnut. They recorded weaker output in 7 out of 7 El Nino events, and the decline is quite significant. Other areas that we are quite interested in is actually rapeseed, because it actually has a very high edible oil content, and they have declined in 4 out of 7 El Nino events, just based on this analysis. And what we do see in terms of edible oils import trend is that we tend to see higher palm oil imports during an El Nino event, basically because oilseeds production in India may be affected, and that has resulted in higher demand for edible oils, and they have to import them. So we tracked the 5 El Nino events. It looks like India imported higher than usual edible oils during the past El Nino. But depending on the price discount between palm oil and soybean oil, at times if palm oil price is discount narrows significantly against soybean oil, we could see potentially share of imports of palm oil could be affected because of the shortages caused by the El Nino. So I think we have concluded basically India typically buys more edible oil, import more edible oils during period of El Nino. There's a high probability of that. So the third one we're going to analyze here is soybean production. So this is a forecast done by Agribank's Insights report, and they have mapped out historical El Nino events impact on US soybean production. And this is their analysis. I think it shows that actually El Nino could have a positive impact on soybean production in the US. They see positive yield deviation in 82% of the past El Nino events that they track. There are less abandonment of areas for soybean in the US, and actually planted area actually increased in most of the time during El Nino events. So it would appear that US soybean could be a beneficiary of El Nino events. And if we take a look at the ongoing soybean crop progress in the US, it certainly suggests that the weather pattern is not too bad. Currently, if you look at the 2015 line on top of this chart, you can see that about 60% of the soybean planting area in US is rated as good and excellent, which is not too bad when you compare them against 2011 and 2013 outlook. Currently, we are already at the dropping leaf stages in terms of the development of the soybean progress. So we should soon have the exact supply coming out from US probably by October or November this year. But it looks like it's a decent crop. It's going to be lower than 2014, but it looks like it's going to be better than 2011, 13, and 12 as well. And then we do this same analysis, and we do that for global soybean production. And what we find is that if we just do the same analysis as what I mentioned for palm oil, you track all the global soybean production changes during El Nino year, you find that actually production for soybean globally has been quite good during past El Ninos. And then it tends to drop off a year later, probably because of the bumper harvest during the El Nino years. But generally it looks like they're more positive than negative for soybean during the past El Ninos. So we have concluded three analyses. We look at palm oil supply impact from El Nino, and we have concluded that to be negative impact on supply for palm oil during El Nino phase. India also potentially domestic oilseeds production will be affected during El Nino, so they could import more edible oil. And we have concluded that soybean looks like historically tends to have better year in terms of harvest during El Nino. So now we're going to talk a bit about price. And we actually do analysis on price, and I just want to indicate that here we are looking at calendar year and looking at CPO price and soybean oil price behavior during El Nino period. So again, we go back to 9 El Nino events, and we see that except for 2004 and 5, for some reason the price fell, but the rest of the period that we track, prices tends to react positively. In terms of how much prices are going to go up, maybe to some extent it depends on how intense is the El Nino condition. But generally we're looking at prices going up by about 13 to 14%, 13 to 40% based on our tracking of past El Nino. And soybean oil, depending, I think it more or less follows palm oil most of the time, okay, in terms of price impact. And then I'll move on to our price view. For 2015, we are currently undergoing a very low price period. Our view is that this is because of slower demand growth for edible oil. This could be because of weaker demand from China, lower biodiesel demand. That's all causing the current weak prices. Currently, the El Nino has not had a major impact on prices, as far as we can see, and that is basically because we have very high, to some extent, one of the highest inventory we have in Malaysia currently, and soybean stocks globally are at record high as well. So a lot of traders will look at this as a potential buffer in the event of any shortfall in edible oils supply at this moment. So at this juncture, unlike 2014, we don't see that much reaction in terms of price from the El Nino news. So our view is that prices will trade in the range of 2008 to 2002 in the short term. And you know, for reference purpose, the last spot price when I did this presentation yesterday was about 2006, and the future price are trading at those ranges at about 2000, 2001. So that's our view for 2015 as we are coming to the end of 2015. And one of the reasons we mentioned earlier was that stocks are quite high. That's providing a buffer for any case of shortfall. And you can see here, soybean stock trend. Soybean, you can see from 1993 up to now, the projected stock levels for 14-15 is at record high. Look at it another way, you want to take the stock divided by the supply ratio to see percentage-wise, are the stock really that high? It also suggests relatively high stock situation. Then we take a look at the global palm oil stock. This is not Malaysia, but globally. And it also looks on the high side compared to historical. It's not the highest point, unlike soybean, but it's still relatively high. So that could be, you know, one of the reasons why prices are not reacting so aggressively on the El Nino news. For 2016, we think that this El Nino will have to be closely watched. In my view, this could be a potential wildcard, and potentially the news that you know, CPO price badly need to get it you know, on a recovery trend. So our view is that we think that this could be a potential catalyst, 2016. We have seen lower rainfall data in Kalimantan, Sabah, and we think that that could affect production in 2016. So we have to be mindful of that. Indonesia's biodiesel demand, in my view, will recover in next year, because for most of this year they've not been consuming much domestic biodiesel demand because they're getting their policy on CPO levy to basically help subsidize the price difference. So there are challenges in terms of Indonesia's plan to basically boost their biodiesel demand, but we think that the chances are better going into next year than what we are seeing this year. And then we also have in the news, our government together with Indonesian government are looking at various potential price stabilization mechanism. They're looking at increasing biodiesel demand, they're looking at replanting program. This is not something that is very new. I mean, we've seen that in the previous time when we had severe price decline, but I think every little bit helped for the price. So our CPO price projection at this juncture, and we look at the average price, stands at about 2,450 per ton for 2016. And the other observation, perhaps, I think that was mentioned earlier as well, is that at times when you have shortages or a lower supply for palm, there is a possibility that the discount between soybean oil narrows, and that could be one of the impact that can be deduced from an El Nino event. And obviously with any price forecast there's risk, and so I've listed down the key risks to our price forecast for 2016. So this is basically shows you a chart of rainfall that we captured in one of those websites, and basically South Sumatra, Central Kalimantan, you can see the rainfall below the 100 millimeter level, which is considered deficient for palm. Okay, so those areas, I think Indonesia will be more affected historically from El Nino compared to Peninsular Malaysia. And we try to show a chart here as well, looking at price discount between CPO against soybean. During El Nino period, I think there's a tendency that the discount may narrow, but whether it could trade at a premium, you need a severe shortfall in CPO for that to happen. In terms of looking at a price premium for CPO against soybean oil, but I would say that the discount, there's a possibility the discount could narrow. So I'll now go through the concluding remarks. Our view is that the El Nino event has historically resulted in lower rainfall. I think the key areas to watch is basically Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia, not so much impact on edible oils, and more so we should watch out for India, which is currently, we will know soon the oilseeds harvest. And if they have another year of bad harvest, then we could see potentially higher imports of edible oils, especially palm. So we have also indicated that severe drought will impact palm oil yields, and that's evidence from historical records. And Mr. Ling has mentioned how the droughts would typically have a lag effect on palm oil yields. So now, if you want to know the exact impact on yields, I think Mr. Ling is the expert, but historically we can roughly say that it depends on the intensity of the El Nino strength, how the particular planting areas have been affected by lower than expected rainfall. But every time we did a study, it does show that palm oil production were affected, maybe on a 1-year lag, and CPO price tends to react positively. And I have also mentioned that we have not seen the El Nino having a big impact on prices because of the stock levels that we currently have in the edible oils market. And also, this year we are adjusting for a weaker biodiesel demand. Biodiesel, if you have tracked the news, has been growing for the last 14 years. This year is the first year where we are seeing a decline in biodiesel demand. So we think that for 2016, this El Nino will become a more important factor. We think that it will have a positive impact on CPO price, but how impactful will really depends on how the weather develops in some of the key planting areas. Currently, we still have stocks, so we are not too worried. I think especially from the traders' point of view, they're not too worried about the El Nino. But if it continues to affect supply and Indonesia get their act together in terms of implementing biodiesel, then we could see potentially a decline in stocks, maybe by first half of next year, and prices could recover strongly if all this works out for CPO. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, and I'd like to thank everyone for their attention. Thank you.
Thank you. We now invite for any questions you may want to ask Ms. IBN. I would like to remind you to go to the mic at the aisle so that everyone can also benefit from your questions. Any questions? Really have asked all the questions. Okay, good morning. Right?
I think we can adjourn.
If there's no questions, I would like to thank you, Ms. Ng, for the informative presentations, and we look forward to the potential higher palm oil export to India, and also see if the higher palm oil prices. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.